Kells Marine Cluster was formed a few years ago with a grant from CEDA, and the idea was primarily to form a virtual shipyard. So a lot of companies on the island were getting in business but couldn't go for the bigger bids because of restrictions either on size or labour or whatever, finance. One of the prime reasons for setting up a cluster was to try and be able to bid for bigger contracts, and then between the companies they would share the work out. It was operational for just over 2 years, and then the grant money stopped, and when the grant money stopped, so did the cluster. It had served its purpose to a certain extent, but unfortunately a lot of the companies that were in the cluster didn't take advantage of it. There was no membership fee, so there was no sense of belonging. When it collapsed, shall we say, the Chamber was approached to see if we would take it on. Marine South East offered to give us a little bit of funding for the first year, and we took it on and immediately said to people, the only way we can continue is if you agree to pay some form of membership fee, because there was no income. We have 78 active members now. We support the local business marine sector by giving them the correct information, and that could be by using the Chamber Advice Line, which helps them to make the right decisions, to giving them information from other sources that comes to me as the organiser of the cluster. And that varies from meeting people, inward missions where people have come from abroad. We've organised meetings about Cowes Harbour development, anything that is of importance to people. I've just returned from 2 boat shows. I did the Dubai boat show in March, in which 2 members of the cluster were actually at the show, so we got them funding from UK Trade and Investment, and they attended the show. It's still early days, it's the first time they've been, and we warn everybody that goes to a boat show, it normally takes 3 years, especially in the Middle East, to break into the market, primarily because they want to get to know you and know that you're going to come back. On the whole, the show was very successful. Bearing in mind Dubai is going through the biggest recession they've ever seen, everybody that we spoke to after the show was more than pleased with the results they got. It was very, very positive this year. The marine activities on the island are probably not necessarily one of the most financially rewarding, but certainly Cowes has got an international name and an international reputation for being a marine-based organisation. So that's one of the reasons it was called Cowes Marine Cluster, to move on the worldwide perception of that name. I, as part of my job as international trade manager, do the export documentation, so we do have a lot of inside knowledge on how the Isle of Wight is doing exporting wise. We think we're doing our own, doing a good job in holding our own in a very difficult climate at the moment, and the marine sector is holding up as good as anyone. The marine sector on the island is very stable at the moment. We are still taking on new members. We are still getting marine companies moving to the island. And one of the things that I've pushed every time I go to Dubai or Beirut or any of these other countries with the boat shows, when I talk to other manufacturers that are struggling either with the quality of staff they can recruit or the cost of staff they can recruit, we do point out to them there is a company called Seaward Marine that came to the Isle of Wight from Guernsey, and they had a few hiccups when they first came, but they are very, very successful now, and anybody that's ever thinking about coming to the island, we always point them in their direction. There has been a few shortages of local skills, which a few people are doing exemplar work at trying to overcome the problem. Aluminium welding is a very specialist marine industry really, and there has been a shortage, and people like South Boats are now running their own training courses which are getting national approval now, and certainly getting a lot of praise from a lot of people in the training industry. Most of the skills are well covered. We've had a couple of companies come back now that do good, what I call old-fashioned marine carpentry, and part of them coming was we encourage them to take on apprentices, so they're trying to train up people to carry on what is becoming a declining skill. Boat building has changed. We still have quite a few people like South Boats that are producing the correct boats. We've got Cheetah Marine. There's quite a few still actually manufacturing here, and they have very long order lists. And Seaward Marine, again, it's a very specialist company making their own boats, which have got worldwide reputations. So we seem to be beating the odds and doing very well. So I think anything to do with marine on the island is what people expect to find when they come here, whether it's having a trip out in a rib or local caught fish. We have most of those aspects within the Cowes Marine cluster. Cheetah Marine are managing a lot of the marina at Ventnor, and part of that is to have their own fishing boats come in the area. So, you know, through the cluster we do have contact on a regular basis with most of the marine related industries on the island. Most of the businesses on the island are the SMEs that will probably get the greater benefit from being associated with somebody like a cluster. I've talked to a lot of people who find it very intimidating if you say to them, you know, you've got a great product and he's a one-man band, why don't you go to Dubai and promote it? Oh, I don't want to go there, and I don't know how to do it, and I couldn't afford to do it. And it's those sort of issues that we can resolve. It's having the contacts and the signposting to where there is still money available, where there is help available. So it's convincing them sometimes just to go that extra mile. Cowes Outer Harbour project is, in my mind, one of the obvious ways to go. There is a lot of controversy about waterside frontage. I've been involved in a couple of research projects that are looking at whether the planning authority should stamp out development of non-commercial property along waterfronts, because once it's gone, it's gone. And a lot of these companies, they need the waterfront ability to get a boat into the water, or, you know, to bring in goods from abroad. I know Red Funnel have a few issues. The people in East Cowes certainly have issues about the development of it. The River Medina certainly is ripe for development. So Cowes Harbour development, I think, will expand all the way up to Newport. And I think it will be good. It will make us more competitive with a lot of the other marinas. If you look at Brighton Marina, when it was first built, nobody used it. You know, now you probably can't get a berth there. Southampton Marina, exactly the same. But if you go there now, several years on, they're all chock-a-block. And what we should be doing is trying to make Cowes Harbour chock-a-block with as many yachts as we can get there. The biggest challenge to the marine sector at the moment is government red tape. One of the issues seems to be the EU will come out with a directive, and certain countries will obey every last dot and comma in the directive, and other countries will turn around and say, yeah, okay, we're not going to do that. The UK seems to be very keen on abiding by the actual wording of every directive, whether it's disruptive to British companies or not, and in the marine sector especially. I've discussed this with representatives from Spain, Germany and France, and I say, what have you done about this act? And they say, nothing, we don't meet it, whereas the UK government insists we do. Now, if it's a level playing field and we're all meeting the same criteria, that's fine. But if we're going to be singled out to having to meet every criteria and the other countries are not, we won't be able to compete, because financially we can't do that. It's very difficult for companies to export. There is a lot of assistance there. There's some very good websites which talk you through how you can find funding, how you can do export documentation. For the SMEs, small to medium enterprises, they haven't got time to do it. And that's where the advantage of being a chamber member or a cluster member comes in.